How long should I study for every night? This is a question that has tormented students for a very long time, and you can see it asked everywhere in places like RVCE and VC discussion space. If only we knew how much time we had to put in to get a certain study score or a certain ATAR, achieving our goals would be so much easier. Well, that's what I'm here to help you with today. Hi everyone, my name is Darren. For those of you who are new to the channel, I'm a recent Year 12 graduate from Scotch College based in Melbourne, Australia. And starting in about 2 weeks, I'll be starting medicine at Monash University. For me, studying was always about a feeling. I'd study until I was confident in what I was trying to master and confident that I'll be prepared for the next assessment. But I also know some people really like calculations and having a set number of hours to aim for. So I'll be aiming to help you guys with that today. The overall video will be aimed towards me trying to guide you guys to the answer of how long should I study for every night. The video will be split into 2 parts. The first part, I will be talking about the 3 factors that determine how long you should study for. And in the second part, I will do some calculations time-wise and provide some examples of how long I recommend you guys should study for. Enjoy. So let's have a chat about the 3 factors that determine how long you should study for. 1 are your goals, 2 are your subjects, and 3 is your ability. So first off, with goals, I think it's pretty evident that they affect how much time you spend each night. For me, my goal was to get 50 in each subject I did, so the time I put in each night had to reflect that. For other people and for you guys, it might be things like getting above a certain ATAR requirement for the course you want to get into. It might be a prerequisite for certain subjects for your course. Or it might be things like a 60 or a 70 or an 80 or a 90 or a 99 ATAR. So those numbers that sound quite nice and they seem like a sort of cutoff or a benchmark, and you might want to get above those. And so the amount of time you put in should reflect that goal. So with what subjects you do, it's less what specific subject you do, but rather what type of subject it is. So I think the subjects broadly fall under 2 categories. One, you have the conceptual subjects. For example, math methods, specialist maths, further maths, and parts of the other courses like chemistry, where you understand the formula, you understand the concept behind it. For example, math methods, you understand tangents, and then you can apply it to any question that asks you to find a tangent. So there's not that much memorization involved. You learn a method of doing things, and then you just repeat it over and over. And the second type of subject are memorization subjects. So these are subjects like business management or legal studies, where there's very content heavy, and also biology that's very content heavy. You got to memorize a lot, while understanding still plays a part. A bulk of it is memorization. And also a lot of subjects are also a mixture of both. For example, languages, I think mix concepts and memorization together. Generally, I think memorization type subjects take up more time and they require more consistent work than concept-based subjects. So depending on what subjects you take, what percentage mixture they are, whether they're 70% memorization and 30% concepts, then that also affects how much time you spend each night. So for me, my subjects were quite concept-based. For example, math methods, specialist maths. English language is also quite a concept-based subject. Even with English, for me, it was quite concept as well, because I just kind of understand the layout of how to write it. I develop my structure. And the quotes part, I don't think that's the main focus of English. That's sort of just a requirement for you to be able to perform your analysis better. So I think it's also quite a strong concept-based subject. With chemistry, it's a mixture of both. Latin, I think a lot of it is skill work as well. There is memorization, but that comes a bit earlier in the year. So for me, a lot of it was concept-based. However, because of the goals I had, I still had to put a lot of time into the subjects. So finally, your ability or your affinity towards certain subjects. I think this is quite obvious as well. If you find certain subjects easier, if you find them their content easier to learn, then you can spend a bit less time on them. So for example, some people are very capable at math subjects. Like it's already a bit less time because it's concept-based, but then they find that they learn the concepts really quickly as well and don't need to do a ton of practice questions to understand the underlying principles, so then they can spend much less time. Some people are really good at memorizing things, like the flashcards techniques really works for them and they learn really quickly, and so then they can even spend a bit less time on the memorization related subjects. Then also how much you enjoy a subject as well. I think ability affinity, how easily you take up a subject, and interest. They're all really interconnected. So this is sort of for individual subjects, how easily you find it is to study them, how easy you find it is to learn the content that is required. And of course that reflects how much time you should spend in them as well. So what I recommend you guys do is to really sit down and think about those 3 factors and your relationship with them. So 1, your goals, 2, your subjects, what kind of subjects are they? And also 3, how readily you learn in those subjects and how easy it is you find to get better, depending on how much work you put in. So I think the better way to get this across a bit clearer is if I give an example. So I'll use myself. The way I like to think about it is when you sit down and think about these factors, think of the amount of time you need to spend each night as a sort of slider. So up more hours, down less hours. So looking at my goals, firstly, the first factor, I want to get 50 in each subject. So immediately the slider kind of goes really high up. I basically have to spend a lot of time each night studying. And then we look at factor 2, which is my subjects. For me, I did 6 subjects, so that workload is quite a lot. That's kind of keeps the slider near the top. But a lot of my subjects were concept-based, and more importantly, I found concept-based subjects much easier. For example, math methods and specialist maths, and even English language. Subjects like English were also sort of concept-based for me. I found I could memorize quotes if I used them quite a bit rather than by brute force. And what I had to do was learn the structures and learn the styles and improve those. So for me, that was quite concept-based as well. So slider-wise, it brings it down a little bit. So for example, compared to someone who did the same number of subjects as me, 6, and someone who had the same goals as me, but they did subjects like biology, legal studies, and business management, I think generally their slider would be a bit higher than me. So they'd have to spend a bit more time than me each night because I think memorization subjects generally just take longer and they require more consistent work. So if we now look at the third factor, which is how easily I find it is to get better in those subjects, I found for most subjects I could sort of see a path to getting better and I could just work on those things, which meant that I could spend a bit less time than someone who couldn't. With a subject like chemistry, however, I found that to be a pretty difficult subject for me because one part was that a lot of it was memorization and I struggle with that. I find memorization a bit boring. So for example, if most of my subjects were like chemistry, then I would find them quite difficult to get better in, and so my slider would go up. However, since 5 of my 6 subjects were quite accessible for me, then the slider comes down a little bit. So when you go through those 3 factors and think about yourself and how you are reflected in those 3 factors, think of a slider as how much time you need to spend and then adjust that up and down accordingly as you go through your goals, your subjects, and how readily you take up to those subjects. So part 2 of the video, the calculation side of things, I'll sort of break down the time you have between finishing school and finishing your nighttime study. Of course, everyone's a bit different with their own schedules, so adjust this and take this into account accordingly. So let's say the average student finishes school at 3:30 p.m. and they finish all their nighttime study at 12 a.m. So the reason I say 12 a.m. is I think for SACs and for exams, there are a couple nights when you can push it to 1 a.m. or even 2 a.m. But I think usually productivity decreases a lot around after 12 a.m. And also it sort of affects the next day as well because you're feeling a bit sluggish and a bit tired. I think 12 a.m. is a good number. And also if you're consistently pushing to 1 a.m. or even later, then I think that's usually an indicator that you could have been more productive beforehand. I've know a lot of smart kids in my year and it wasn't really necessary to push that late every single night. So let's take 3:30 p.m. to 12 a.m. As that block of time. So for going home, approximately 30 minutes, let's say for the average student. So they get home at 4 p.m. And for dinner, let's take out an hour for dinner, so 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. And then for things like chores and for the miscellaneous in-between activities, maybe getting home, getting settled, changing clothes, having a shower, getting your books out, let's say that takes 45 minutes. So we take that all into account, getting home, 30 minutes, dinner, an hour, getting all your stuff ready, settling down, chores, all that, 45 minutes. And we take that away from that time you have between 3:30 and 12 o'clock. Then in total, on an optimal study day, you have 6 hours and 15 minutes. So keep in mind that this is on an optimal day. If you have things like sport, music, extracurriculars like debating, public speaking, if you're in a relationship, if you have other activities going on in your life, then that time might be cut from 6 hours, 15 minutes to 5 hours or to 4 hours. So it really depends every single day. So if we return to that optimal day of 6 hours and 15 minutes, I don't believe in sort of studying for 6 hours, 15 minutes straight. I do recommend you take breaks in between, and I'll make another video about different study techniques you can try, such as the Pomodoro technique, where you 25 minutes and 5 minutes off. But of course, you don't study for that whole 6 hours, 15 minutes. I reckon overall, maybe you have half an hour off if you add up those little breaks that you have. So it might be 5 hours and 45 minutes. So what I do recommend is to actually study for that entire time. So excluding the breaks and excluding all the other getting home, all those extra stuff, I do recommend studying for all the time that you have available to study. And the main reason for this is not because I want to push you extremely hard, but I think it's just for VCE, for most people, this is the time that they really want to do their best. This is the time where people don't want to have any regrets. And I know many of you are watching these videos and are working really hard because you want to do your best. Not many people there are also some people who just want to hit a prereq and hit a required ATAR, and their ability and the subjects they do might exceed that by quite a bit, and they only want to hit that prereq, and I think that's fine. Then you don't have to spend all that time, and it's up to you. But I think the majority of people watching, and for the majority of people who do take VCE, they really want to push themselves. This is like their chance to really try out their discipline and to really push out their potential and see what they can achieve. So I think for that to happen, you really do have to study for the entirety of that time that you have. So 6 hours, 15 minutes with a couple breaks in between that. Because I think that way you won't have any regrets, and because you really want to push yourself to the max and get the best result that you can, that's the best way to do it. I think this idea of however much time you have to study on a particular day, making the most of all of it, is particularly important for you guys this year and in future years, because I think COVID will be hopefully less of an issue and you won't be in isolation the whole time. So that means you'll have a lot of spontaneous gatherings, you'll have 18ths, a lot of parties, things like that. And so you don't really know when they'll pop up. So I recommend each day you just make the most of the time you have, so that when they do pop up, you've put in all the work you've done, you'll have no regrets, and you've stayed on top of everything that needs to be done for your assessments and for your SACs. So as to how much time you should spend on each individual subject, I think the subjects you guys do are far too diverse for me to answer that conveniently, but I will be making videos on specific subjects and also how I allocated my time, so stay tuned for those in the future. Generally though, those 3 factors that I talked about at the beginning, so your goals, your whether the subject is conceptual or whether it's memorization based, and also your ability in the subject, let that direct not only your overall, how much time you spend for studying, but also how much you spend on each subject. So what I try and achieve is equal confidence in all your subjects, so that you plug any holes that you have in them. But of course, the work you need to put in to achieve that level of confidence depends on each subject and is different for each subject. And let those 3 factors guide you to how much work exactly that is. So what I'm saying might seem contradictory to the work-life balance you guys have heard so much about. But when I think of the life part of that, it's things that are organic, things like going out with friends, parties, sport, extracurriculars like public speaking and debating. What I don't think helps with work-life balance are leisure activities such as gaming, such as TV shows, and such as just watching television. I don't think, like binging. I don't think many people feel good after binging, right? Like the TV show is still going to be there in the holidays or, after year 12. But, after you've binged all this time, 5-6 hours, you've lost a whole day, then I don't think many people feel that good about it. Whereas with things like sport, you feel really energized after you've sweated, after you've exerted, then you feel really prepared. Your mind is actually refreshed to take on new tasks. With things like going out with friends, I think that really energizes you and motivates you. You're going through this whole journey together, which I think really helps with work-life balance. And I think organic activities such as the extracurriculars and the friends, they will just happen naturally and they'll be taken into account with like what I said before. So rather than 6 hours, 15 minutes, you'll get 4 hours, 5 hours, of work available, and sometimes even less if you have a lot planned. Whereas more, I think, addictive and more less revitalizing types of activities, such as gaming and TV shows, I would sort of urge you not to factor that into your night and to stay away from those, because they don't actually help with work-life balance. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I hope it's helped you in deciding how long you should study for each night. If you're looking for more VC related content, please check out these videos here. If you've liked today's video, please like, comment and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you all next time.